Desi Arnaz Jr. say, as life may seem like a glamorous Hollywood story, born to the legendary Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz scene, and into a life of royalty where life may seem perfect for the celebrity from afar, but behind the laughter lies a tale of struggle and pain. From an early age, he faced battles that no one could see, burdens hidden beneath the bright stage lights. Yet, there was one revelation that changed everything. What really made his life so miserable despite all the fame and fortune? How the spotlight affected Desi Jr. From the moment Desi Arnaz Jr. took his first breath, he was already a star. His arrival into this world was celebrated on the cover of TV Guide, with the entire nation tuned in to the birth of I Love Lucy's little Ricky. But what happens when the world expects you to be just as charming, just as funny, just as perfect as the characters your parents played? For Desi Jr., that pressure was a heavy burden. He wasn't just any child, he was the son of TV royalty. And as much as his parents' stardom brought him privileges, it came with a price. Imagine being born into a world where every smile, every misstep, every teenage rebellion is under a magnifying glass, dissected by fans and tabloids alike. As he grew up, Desi Jr. found himself constantly walking in the long shadow cast by I Love Lucy, a show that shaped American television forever. But that legacy wasn't always a blessing. How could a child possibly live up to the expectations of the public when his every move was compared to the slapstick genius of his parents? The world saw him as the embodiment of Lucille Ball and Desi Sr.'s dreams, but Desi Jr. struggled to find himself in the midst of all that expectation. He wasn't allowed to be simply a boy. He had to be the son of Lucy and Desi. Behind the scenes, the reality was far from the sitcom perfect world America adored. Desi Jr. often found himself as a spectator in his own life, watching as his parents' careers consumed them. The laughter on screen was often followed by tension at home, arguments, misunderstandings, and the constant strain of maintaining their perfect public personas. He learned to smile for the cameras, even when his heart was heavy with confusion. With each red carpet event, with every public appearance, the pressure kept piling on. As early as a little boy, he had known that millions expected him to carry the torch of I Love Lucy, to further the legacy his parents had so brick by brick built. But behind his bright smile, a question: could he ever be enough? And with every flash of those cameras, Desi Jr. felt the full weight of that fame his family had cultivated begin to bear down on him. The name that brought so much pride also carried the crushing burden of expectation. It wasn't enough that he had to live up to the Hollywood mold. It was also about being seen as the reflection of his parents' greatest triumphs. But how do you build an identity for yourself when the world is completely satisfied just seeing you as the son of? The pressure to maintain the image of the family followed Desi Jr. into his teenage years, pushing him to rebel and find some sense of self outside of this tightly scripted life of Hollywood royalty. The limelight that once seemed dazzling now felt like a prison of constant comparisons and impossible standards. The most challenging part of growing up, probably as the son of Lucille Ball, was that loneliness. Of course, there were glittering parties and adoring fans, but few knew what the real struggles of a boy who wanted simply to be seen for himself, not for the person he was supposed to be. Behind the cameras, he longed for a sense of normalcy, some place where he wasn't little Ricky or Desi Jr., but just Desi. But what he couldn't know then was how it would shape his future. The pressure cooker of fame wasn't molding only a celebrity, but a man who would wrestle with addiction, heartbreak, and the perpetual search for his own identity. Early life set a stage for a series of later difficulties that followed Desi Jr. into adulthood, leaving scars no camera could capture. Yet little did people know, the most shocking revelations about his life were yet to come. Desi Jr.'s troubled bond with his parents. Desi Arnaz Jr. did not just inherit a famous name, but had a whole world of expectations set upon him, and a family that was anything but harmonious. Behind the glamorous facade of Hollywood's golden couple, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz Sr., there were deep rifts that would shape Desi Jr.'s childhood. As a child, Desi Jr. idolized his parents, but as he grew older, the tension between their need to protect him and his need for independence became all but palpable. It was unquestionable that Lucille Ball loved her son, but it was a love wrapped in layers of control. As a mother, Lucille often tried to manage Desi Jr.'s life at every turn, looking to protect him from the pitfalls of fame that she and Desi Sr. had already crossed. But to a teenage Desi Jr., that protectiveness was stifling. Growing up in a world observing his every step, the hovering of Lucille seemed to veil his path at every turn. Who could blame him for wanting to fly free? But Lucille's tight grip would not release without a lot of arguments and painful silences. Entered Desi Arnaz Sr., that charming Cuban band leader who charmed America with his partner Lucille, but not quite so much off-camera. The relationship with his son was fraught with weird admiring your distance dancing. He shared his love of music with Desi Jr., but the demons of his past wouldn't let him go. The stormy marriage of Lucille and Desi Sr. often made Desi Jr. the crossfire. How does a boy reconcile the larger-than-life image of a father adored by millions with the man who sometimes seemed unreachable at home? Desi Jr. still yearned for his father's acceptance, but the battle with alcoholism and the breakup of Desi Sr.'s marriage to Lucille made it tough to bond with him. His father was a real showman who might have been rollicking with pleasure one moment, but who might disappear for extensive periods on one of his troubling mood swings, making Desi Jr. feel quite abandoned. But the rare times that those two did connect, there was a glimmer of the bond that could have been. It's hardly a surprise that glimpses, brief and fleeting as they were, placed an ache in Desi Jr. for more amidst his anger at the void his father consistently created. Torn between Lucille's iron clutches and Desi Sr.'s more sporadic presence, Desi Jr. had to struggle along the arduous way of fashioning an identity. How could he balance the high standards of his mother with the casual attitude of his father? He grappled with the burden of being both Lucy's boy and Desi's son, identities that somehow felt like roles he'd never auditioned for. While they may be legends for all others, to Desi Jr., they often represented confusion, heartbreak, and longing. These didn't suddenly disappear, but as Desi Jr. grew older, they transformed into scars that followed him into adulthood. The ways in which his relationship with his parents did or didn't work cast a long shadow not over his sense of self, but also over the way he connected with others. But it was in his romantic life that these issues really came to the foreground and led to a string of tumultuous love affairs, right up to the shocking revelation nobody saw coming, Desi Jr.'s chaotic love life. If Desi Jr.'s relationship with his parents was complicated, his love life was even more chaotic, a tangle of heartbreaks, high-profile romances, and the weight of his famous last name. He wasn't just dating in Hollywood, he was dating as Hollywood royalty, with every relationship headline-worthy and every breakup dissected in tabloids. From his teen years on, he seemed caught in some sort of passion and turmoil whirlwind. But behind the glitter, many of his romantic conquests mirrored a great deal of the darker battles he had to fight with himself. Desi Jr., his most significant first relationship was with none other than Patty Duke, a Hollywood starlet in her own right. Their romance was quite a sensation, and not because of their star power alone, but because of their age difference. Desi Jr. was just 17 when he started seeing Patty in her 20s. It was a relationship that came under much public scrutiny, but the real pressure came from within his family. Lucille Ball was fiercely protective, and she made it no secret that she did not approve of the relationship. To a young Desi, who had to experience all this feeling torn between love and loyalty, the tension was unbearable. How could he follow his heart when it meant defying the mother he adored? The rocky romance with Patty Duke came to an end, and in the life of Desi Jr., it was all ups and downs. He dated another Hollywood legend, Liza Minnelli, but the pressures of being famous and coming from a clearly famous family just became too much. The same issues of seeking acceptance and having to struggle in finding himself outside of his parents' legacy were faced. The last name carried expectations even in love. Was any relationship strong enough to survive under that kind of scrutiny? The later marriages mirrored the same passion and pain that was Desi Jr.'s. He married Linda Pearl and later Amy Laura Bargill, but his struggle to escape the ghosts of his past often seeped into his relationships. He also felt the burden of disapproval from his mother, coupled with the fear of not being as charming as his father. How could one lay a foundation when his heart was still caught amidst leading a youth full of turmoil? But among the sea of these broken hearts, there came one relationship that was going to change everything in Desi Jr.'s life. An affair, much like many in his tempestuous love life, yet beneath his unruffled veneer lay hidden a realization salient enough to redefine his journey. For Desi Jr., it wasn't about finding love, but finding himself. And that quest would lead him to a shocking reality, one he had never seen coming. What was this revelation that turned his love life upside down? How did it reshape the way he saw himself, his parents, and the legacy he was carrying? As Desi Jr. navigated the complexities of love and family, he was at an edge of a discovery that would make him question everything he thought he knew. And it was a discovery that would finally bring him face to face with the reality of his past. Desi Jr.'s struggles with addiction and scandal. Growing up amidst all the bright lights of Hollywood, with every move being monitored, it's quite easy to believe that all these stars must have it all. Behind this glittery costume, though, was something even darker than any mind could have ever dreamed of. Desi Jr. The weight of his family's legacy was heavy on Desi Jr.'s shoulders from a very young age. In his struggle to somehow get away from that, he found himself embroiled in a fight with addiction. At what point did this downward spiral begin? And what haunting realities were buried beneath his struggle? It was during his teenage years, the time when every youngster is busy knowing who they are. But Desi Jr. was figuring out how to cope with being Desi Arnaz Jr., the son of two giants in Hollywood. It was pressure that was never off his shoulders. It just wasn't about maintaining a certain public image. It was beating the ghosts of Lucille Ball's controlling and Desi Sr. legacy. He had turned to substances as respite from the constant scrutiny and expectations that never seemed to let up. But what started off as a means of escape soon turned into a spiral that threatened to consume his whole life. With the passage of time, it got tougher to conceal the struggles that Desi Jr. faced. The scandals latched onto the tabloids, memeing headlines of him as a fallen star who had not been able to keep up with his parents' pristine image. But behind the headlines was a young man in pain, desperate for a place in the world that never let him forget who he was supposed to be. The public saw a wild side, but not the nights of regret, the strained relationships, and the endless cycle of trying and failing to get clean. How did Desi Jr. end up this way? And why did it take so long to find his way out? It came at a very dark moment, really forced Desi Jr. to face the ghosts of his past. He knew the drugs and the alcohol were an escape. It was a way to deaden the hurt feelings he had insofar as never being good enough for mom and dad. In the fog of addiction, a glimmer of hope seemed to appear. He knew he would lose everything if he didn't make the change, including himself. It was one of those fights that required every bit of strength left in him. Desi Jr. began the painful process of recovery, checking himself into rehab and facing the harsh realities he had so long buried. The quitting of substances wasn't just it. There was pain he had carried since childhood. It is during moments of this nature that Desi Jr. finds himself faced with a shocking truth that changes the course of his whole life. A revelation that was to redefine not only his perception of his frailties, but also expose him to a family chronicle he never really knew about. What was he to find out during his darkest days? And how did this new understanding allow him to crawl his way back from the edge? The answers lay in a moment that Desi Jr. never saw coming, a revelation that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his past. How he found hope through Desi Arnaz. After years of chaos, Desi Arnaz Jr. finally found refuge in the most unlikely of places, his sister Lucille Arnaz. Though their lives had always been intertwined with the turmoil of their family's fame, it wasn't until Desi Jr. sought to rebuild his life that he truly began to understand the strength they shared. Working their way through the painstaking process of solidifying their parents' legacy, they found a deeper connection that would change their lives forever. But how does a new bond reveal secrets they never could have imagined? Growing up, Lucy and Desi Jr. were under the same roof, yet their experiences were worlds apart. With Lucy, there was always this sense of responsibility, of carrying on the grace and charm of her mother. Desi Jr. always had that ever-present weight of being his father's namesake. But as adults, they began to realize their struggles weren't so different after all. After Desi Jr.'s rehabilitation, Lucy had become an anchor to him, a reminder that he wasn't alone in carrying the burdens of their past. Together, they had embarked on a quest to keep alive the memory of their parents while living with the reality of what life in the spotlight did to their family. They were working together on projects, rummaging through old scripts, letters, and home videos, each an artifact, a reminder of the parents they loved but never quite understood. It was these moments that they came across other than just stories of their parents' success, the pain and sacrifice that tagged along with it. It was a journey that would bring them closer together, yet simultaneously lead to a revelation that would leave them both in doubt about everything they thought they knew. Lucy and Desi Jr. faced an uncomfortable truth about the marriage that defined their parents' lives. It wasn't until they were able to put the story together that they saw the cracks in it, the secrets and struggles of Lucille and Desi Sr. that had been carefully shielded from public view. The truly incredible thing, however, was just how far these secret wounds had seeped in to mar their own existence. It was a revelation that flipped their understanding of their family upside down, and it brought them in a whole new layer of healing together. But with revelations, a shared bereavement, there was hope. Desi Jr. finally found a new purpose, not just in continuing the memory of his famous parents, but in being a brother, father, and man, set to conquer the ghosts of his past. He clung to his closeness with Lucy, as she reminded him that family wasn't just about the hand-me-down stories that they inherit, but about the new ones they would create together. But what was the secret behind it all that shook Desi Jr. and Lucy to their very core? How does this all reshape the legacy they thought they knew? And in the process, does Desi Jr. finally find the peace he has been searching for his whole life? As the pieces of their parents' story fell into place, Desi Jr. and Lucy found themselves standing at the crossroads where the past and future converged, a place where the truth, however painful, offered a chance at redemption. Desi Jr.'s battle with a burdensome legacy. To Desi Arnaz Jr., his last name was both a blessing and a curse, the golden ticket to the world of fame he never asked for but couldn't seem to get away from. The hard thing is trying to establish an identity separate from what Mom and Dad did. Desi Jr. always found himself in the shadow of these two icons. Where would he ever find himself, really, with each step carrying the weight of his name, the Desi Arnaz Jr.? Where would he ever be taken seriously? Or would he always have to play second fiddle in his family's story? Desi Jr. tried to find his way into the industry by acting and indulging in music on higher scales than his parents. He used to star in a number of TV shows and movies. He even had his own band, Dino, Desi, and Billy, which indeed managed to have a share of fame in the 1960s. But with each success there was only a hint. He's good, but he's no Desi Arnaz Sr. The comparisons never seemed to go away. Each triumph still seemed dwarfed by those gigantic figures of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz Sr. Could this be because it was hard to get any place in this world when everyone wouldn't let him be his own man? The most telling part of Desi Jr.'s journey has been his involvement with the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz Center in Jamestown, New York. While he poured his heart into preserving the memory of his parents' legendary contributions to television, it became a double-edged sword. A tribute to a family that altered television history. To Desi Jr., it was just another reminder of the greatness he would never be quite able to pull off. He was honoring the past, but where did that leave his story? Was he ever going to move beyond being some kind of caretaker of his parents' memory and into being his own person? Through his career, Desi Jr. tried to be a player in a game that always seemed to like its memories of his mom and dad just a little bit more than any new thing he could do. Critics rarely recognize that he may have laid the ground to forge his own artistic direction in music and acting, writing it off to family. He just couldn't seem to get away from the story of his trying to fill shoes that nobody ever thought he could. Then, in frustration and a very doubting place, came a revelation that would shake Desi Jr. to his core. It wasn't until years later that I realized I was fighting so hard not to be my parents' son that I didn't know what I wanted, Desi Jr. freely admitted to a reporter. So far had the need to be something other than a famous son driven him that he had never asked himself what was it that he loved doing, what were the things which made him happy. It was that crazy revelation which did speak to the truth. He had been running from the shadow, which would always be a part of him. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to run anymore. That epiphany freed Desi Jr. to adopt a whole new vision about his life and legacy. He no longer considered his last name a burden to bear, but rather as a foundation on which he could build rather than be buried beneath. He realized that this love for music, keeping his parents' history alive, and those quiet moments of creation could finally coexist hand in hand with the pride he felt for what his family had done. But would it be enough to bring him the peace he had sought all these years? Or was the legacy of his parents just a burden he carried upon his shoulders all his life? The answer, as is often the case with so many other things in Hollywood, isn't so easily clear-cut. Desi Arnaz Jr.'s journey has been one of pain, resilience, and the struggle to step out of the shadows. From battling addiction to embracing his role as a custodian of his parents' legacy, his story is a reminder that fame comes with its own set of challenges. But did Desi Jr. finally find the peace he sought? Or is the shadow of his family's legacy still too great to overcome? Share your thoughts in the comments. Does fame leave a gift or a curse?